So my name is, welcome everybody. My name is Jan Sersky, and I'm the chairperson for our committee, which is a Young Historians Committee, and we're connected with through Manitoba Historical Society. And we have been talking about doing something like this for a while, to connecting with educators and helping them facilitate programs for their classrooms. One of the goals, of course, is to encourage and to develop resources and strategies and for teachers, so that they can mentor students to take a greater interest in history, of course. And so I'm going to introduce members of our committee, and some of them haven't logged on, and then we'll start. But my name is, of course, Jan Sersky, and we have Ken Story, if you want to just give a little wave, and he's a member of our committee. He's a new member. And we have Dan Ferlin. He is the chairperson of the Manitoba Historical Society, and he also is a great help to our committee. So thank you. And Janice McMorrin, who's in the bottom there, and she's a committee member, and she has been a committee member for several years. And we also have Leona DeVoost, but she hasn't logged on yet, and she's also a very valuable member of our committee. And not to forget Tracey Turner, who's our executive director of Manitoba Historical Society. And she's the one that sort of is always ready and willing to help us out, and of course, facilitate these kind of meetings for us. So thank you very much, Tracey. This began as a thought and process last summer, and we wanted to do a pilot project, which would be a series of short sessions that would help teachers, or give teachers ideas and help them with approaches to history, to bringing local history into the classrooms. So we figured, well, what better way to do it than through social media. So our session tonight is, you've all seen the write-ups and everything. We're hoping to do 20-25 minute presentation. Then after the presentation, we'll have time for a question period or a discussion period. And then at the end, our executive director, Tracey, will give you some information about our Manitoba Historical Society, some of the services we have to offer too. And I do apologize. I forgot a very important person that's joined us today, and she's Connie Wyatt Anderson. I believe. Where are you, Connie? There. Okay. And Connie is with the Treaty Commission of Manitoba. And she's working on a special projects that would deal with the initiatives that relate to the curriculum, development of curriculum on treaties, which is part of some of the new directives that we have been given by the Department of Education. So thank you very much for joining us, Connie. Appreciate it. And she's all the way from the PAW, I think. Is that where you are today?
Yep, that's where I am. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies for missing you out, because I sometimes talk and my brain goes different ways. So,
No
and of course, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, and Tracey Salamondra. And we all know Tracey, and we're so pleased that you volunteered this. I think it was some encouragement from Ken and from some of the other members, I think, too. But Tracey works at a Hartney School, and she's going to outline the initiative that her and a colleague put together, Carla Cook, and they successfully engaged students with their project, which was a Whitewater Park project. And because of that, they won a 2022 Governor General's Award for Excellence in Teaching. So congratulations for that, Tracey. So she's going to speak a bit on her project, and we'll let her go to it. Please welcome Tracey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm just going to share my screen with you because I've got some photos and some examples of some things that we did, and I will try to keep things somewhat brief because I do tend to get a little excited when I talk about this, but hopefully it'll give you an overview kind of what we did and why we thought it was important and what it's changed into now, because there has been some changes and some continuations of parts of the project. So we'll give this a try, and if you can let me know in a minute if you can see this, that would be great. So unfortunately now I can't see you, so if anybody has any questions as I go, please feel free to interrupt me. This is kind of what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. I'm just going to introduce who Carla and I are and give you a little bit of a brief intro on where we are and what our communities were like. And then I'll I'll talk about the project next, and then some of the things that we found coming out of it. So this is Carla and I with our students in Carberry. We're doing the thing that we love best, and that's getting them out into different areas and trying to learn in real places. We're actually both Northerners. I'm from Flin Flon and Carla's from Thompson. And I think why that's important for us is that we also had to learn the history of our communities. And we grew up feeling like we weren't represented in what we learned about in our schools. And so I think we kind of had that common experience. I'm in year 25 of my teaching career, and I primarily teach social studies and math. And Carla, her specialty was ELA, but we're both rural teachers, which means we have taught every core course in high school. So we were pretty experienced with doing cross-curricular work and multidisciplinary work. But we worked really well together because we kind of had the same philosophy, and that's we always thought what we want our kids to learn should be real. It should be connected to where they are. And whenever possible, we tried to include, assessment that was going to be seen and going to be used. So we are in Hartney, and that is the blue dot on the left if people aren't from the area. And our project took place in Elgin. So they're in two different communities, but very close together in southwest Manitoba. Our school is in a small rural community of about close to 500 residents. We work in a K-12 school, so we have a very small high school, I think of about 45 students. And then it's an agricultural community, but it's changing rapidly in the last few years. We're seeing changes in population, and which is exciting, but it also means that we've got a little bit of a disconnect from our history as well. And Elgin, where we did the actual project, currently has about 100 people, but it was a boom town in the early 1900s with a population of about 400. I think its highest point was close to 5. But currently they do not have a school. And so we were approached as a neighboring school and asked to complete the project for them. And we worked with the museum, which you can see on the right. And that was kind of our community partner that we worked with. So how it all came about was my principal is actually from the Elgin area, and the Whitewater Park, which is just on the outskirts of Elgin. It's a campground, and it's got a beach at the Elgin Dam. They were going to do a park expansion, and they wanted to make an interpretive trail. And so they were looking for somebody to write little historical pieces to be put on the trail. And Carla and I had both done quite a bit of work where we did community partner projects. And I had used some technology and QR codes in my classroom and around the school. So we were approached by them asking if we might help them develop these histories. So we agreed, and COVID hit. So we completed this project during the COVID restrictions, which is still quite amazing. This picture on the right is my class visiting the Elgin Museum. It was on Halloween, so that's why some of them were dressed up there. But yes, we were going through where we could only have 2 people in a building at the time and navigating through the restrictions. But that was one of the benefits of being in a small school. So these were our big project goals because we figured we really needed to have a good understanding of what we wanted to accomplish with the project and how it could fit into curriculum when we were planning. So again, it fit our philosophy of being real and relevant. Um, we were really pushing to have our students see themselves in what we taught in class. That was a I found that students were seeing history as something that happened in other places. It was something that was completed, and it was something that you just had to learn the details of it. They didn't see it as a living discipline, and so we really wanted to change that. We had been working on trying to incorporate primary and secondary evidence, but again, students were seeing it as it came from somewhere else. So sometimes because it wasn't in their context, that added an extra a layer of difficulty to it. We really wanted them to learn their own stories, and we really wanted them to understand their communities as they prepared to finish high school. And we had this moment where we thought, you know, instead of trying to be a small school that offers everything that a big school does, why aren't we doing something here that maybe would be harder in a large school? And so we really thought we have really good community connections and we're going to capitalize that. And then the other one too is I think it helped connect people in the community to the school and to teenagers and maybe, you know, dispel some preconceptions about each other. It really connected the two groups. And again, making our what we taught in our class a real thing rather than a story in a textbook. So we sat down, and I'm not going to go through all of these details, but we sat down together. And over the summer, we made like a year plan. And we thought, can I, in history, how can I complete the research section and start the writing section and using real sources? And how can Carla support me on the English side? And we came up with a year plan of how we could focus the grade 11 year on this project while we also taught the other parts of our curriculum. And so I really wanted to look at, you know, how do we do historical narratives? You know, what is the structure of them? What is included? How do we work with evidence? How, you know, how does a museum decide what goes in and what doesn't go in and what themes emerge and you know, how can we use that? As well as looking at oral history and how do we research from multiple sources. So things that I wanted to do anyway, but instead of always looking to the outside, we were looking a little bit more at what we had available to us. And then Carla supplemented that with how do I tell a story? How do I interview people? How do I avoid, you know, telling somebody else's story falsely, like the dangers of a single story? How do I interview? How do I write in this style? And we really worked together over the year fitting this into our courses to support the project. So it did take quite a bit of planning on the upside. Um, so what this looked like in my classroom, and I included a picture of actually this was going on my board all year. The first thing that we did was we really figured out what was our purpose. What were we going to try and accomplish in the end? And what were those going to look at? So we started with the Vantage Point series, and we looked at how local history was being told in our area. And that gave us the format that we were going to try and follow. So kids knew what their final project would look like and sound like. And that I think helped give us a focus. Then we wrote a letter and we put it out all over social media, radio stations, local papers, explaining what we were going to do and asking for assistants, people that would like to talk to us, names of people we should contact, just to try and get the ball rolling. While we were doing this, we were also doing a little mini unit on oral history projects and we used the Smithsonian for that. I've got a page where I have links to all of the resources that we found really helpful, and I can share that after as well. Then we visited the Elgin Museum because we were finding just with COVID, it was quite difficult. We did do a lot of interviews. You can kind of see there, we've got some Zoom interviews and phone interviews and things like that, email interviews, but it was really hard to meet with people live. And so we partnered with the museum, and it really gave us the kind of the underlying story, and it helped us decide what was important to the community. And I think that that was a really key component for us having success. And the students went in and they took photos and they journaled what stood out to them and what they were seeing as possible topics. And it was just a really go in, spend time. What draws your attention? What might you want to learn more about? And then that allowed us to outline some possible topics and themes. And then later on, I'll show you a picture of how we did some wide research because we didn't have our topics defined yet. And what we had was we picked out possible areas of study. And as kids went along, while they were searching in archives, while we were reading a book together, while they were doing these interviews, if things came up that they felt fit a topic, they put it in the file folder on that topic with the source, and kind of we were just going wide and seeing what would emerge. I think this was the scariest point as a teacher and for the students because we didn't know where it was going. And they said that was one of the tricky things, was really sitting in that time when we weren't sure what was going to come. After that, we narrowed our topics down and the students actually chose 3 things that they would like to write about. And then Ken zoomed in with our class, which was really, really helpful, and talked a little bit about the process that he goes through when he's writing for Vantage Points and how does he go from this research into telling the story. Because that was another spot where I think the kids got a little stuck. And that really gave them kind of the boost and the guidance to get that started. And then we spent a lot of time where we were writing and revising, but this was really exciting as a teacher because kids were making appointments to come and sit with you one-on-one and go through things. And this was happening outside of class because they were really wanting to make sure that they did this well and they told the stories well. And then after we had the pieces written, we actually went back to our interviewees in the museum and fact checked and just made sure that they had told the story the way that they wanted it told. But yeah, this was really exciting. The thing on the picture on the right, because to see kids, this is going on. Who can take this interview on Wednesday at 10? And they're actually signing up to do these extra things in pairs. They're having phone interviews with people that they don't know. Larry McGuire, our MP, he Zoomed with the kids and talked about his life in Elgin. And they were just taking on so much responsibility. So these were the sources that really helped us. We did a lot of work. I do some in grade 9 with them as well, but also in grade 11, looking at how do we work with photos, how do we work with newspaper articles, how do we work with artifacts. And so we've used the Canadian War Museum supply line, the Canadian Museum of History's history box, as well as the Critical Thinking Consortium have really good outlines to help teachers do that. We use the Smithsonian, as I said, for our oral history. We used the University of Manitoba, their archives for newspaper searches, and those were some of the most fun rabbit holes that we went down, finding out what was being written about Elgin in the early 1900s in different newspapers and who won the lacrosse game and things like that. The Manitoba Historical Society, we used your archives of historic sites in Manitoba. It really helped with some of the photos that were included in the articles that went on the trail, as well as kind of pointing us out to things that we might have missed. And then, yeah, the Turtle Mountain Souris Plains Heritage Association and the Vantage Point series, that really was our guide on how we wanted to write these, as well as learning stories from our area as we did it. So what it ended up looking like was this. So this is Whitewater Park in Elgin, and there is an interpretive trail around the park with 23 of these placards. And it gives an overview of what that story is about. And if the person reading it wants to go further, they can follow the QR code to the kids' articles. And so what the articles looked like was we were really trying, because we knew that they would also be accessed on a phone, we were trying to keep them 1 to 2 pages. So we wanted to make sure that, it was something that people could access on the spot, and they're also being housed in the museum as well. And so these are what the articles look like. So in the end, these were some of the topics that the kids really found interesting. And I had one student that picked two, but the majority of them picked three. And you can see they're a little bit all over the place, but they tie to either interviews that we had or artifacts that were in the museum. So that was another thing that we wanted to do, was we wanted to spark people's interest if they're at the park to also go to the museum and see some of these artifacts as well. And just some of the ones that really stood out, I think for the students and myself too, the railway stories were really enlightening, and that idea of, that we always think of technology as an advancement, but when automobiles came in, it really unfortunately led to the decline of Elgin. And even like the grain elevators, you see one there now, but to know there were five, and to know that in the early 1900s, Elgin had the best producing wheat field in North America. So for the students, it really, really, I think, made them sit back and realize that this was a very important place to the people that were there, and those stories need to be told. What some of my favorites as well is, you think of the Elgin Curling Bonspiel, but this is a community legend, and talking about the meals that were served and the people that got together, and the fact that it's still happening even in a community of 100. That Elgin Bonspiel is still happening, and it's still a major event. And so it was really exciting for them, and I think it really started to make them look around their own community and talk about the stories that are in Hartney as well. And I think they'll continue to look around their communities and ask those same questions. These are a couple of shameless plugs. If anybody's really interested, Carla and I, as part of the Governor General's process, did a podcast. So if you're interested in kind of the work leading up to the project and a bit more detail on that, that is available, and I can send you that link, or if you Google us, you'll find it. And then this was where it all led to. And I also just wanted to promote, we're two teachers from rural Manitoba, and I know there's a lot of amazing projects going on in other places, and I really encourage people to apply. Because it's possible, and I think our stories are and our work is valuable, and it's important that we recognize that. So a couple of things, we got some feedback from the students, and we thought it was really exciting that they started to see that I didn't know my own history, and that these stories, were really human experiences, and that is what makes up history, and it's important that they're remembered as well, and that they started to appreciate, I think, the communities that they're part of. So, couple things that came out when we were talking about it after, because there are some barriers for us, including local history, that make it difficult to do this at such a large scale. For me personally, because I teach high school, one of the things is where it fits the curriculums. I would really love there to be a high school local history option again. I think people of my age, we had that option when we were going to school. And I think it really does allow us to create a spark in kids and make history a living thing. And so I would love to see that come back. if you're from outside the community, it does take a lot of work to build those connections and to connect the school to the different organizations. I think that a lot of people being comfortable teaching history in a chronological way also makes this really difficult because we feel like there's so much content to cover, which is true. But Carla and I kind of took the historical thinking strategy approach and thought for us, the how was the most important. And once we got through that, the content started to also come more quickly. But the biggest thing was it was really also difficult to a lot of, the students and I think both of us as well, you feel like you need to have it laid out perfectly before you tackle it. And we really had to allow this project to happen and be willing to be flexible in it, which was really tricky. These were the two things that we thought were the biggest supports for us was the partnership with the museum or an organization to support us really did, it was key. I think for the students, because we were getting so much information from different places, it helped us figure out what were the significant stories that the community also wanted told. It also helped us look at what stories were missing and kind of tried and talk about how maybe those could be added to later. The other thing was we really did have a supportive administrator that allowed us to have a lot of flexibility. I taught history all year, every second day, to help this project happen. And we were out of the school and we were moving around and, we were bringing speakers in and things like that. And it really did help that we had administrative support on the project. And for us, this was the picture of the topics and students putting information in it. But for us, some of the keys as well as we were a small group. We both taught the same kids, and so we were all committed. And the students trusted us that we were going to support them to take on something this big. They had experience with project-based learning before because we both used it in the grades leading up to grade 11. But I really do think on the last topic, making something that the public was going to see, while it added pressure to the students, I really do think it was key to kind of giving them that drive to do this and to do it well. Because they wanted to make sure they saw that what people were sharing with them was really important, and they wanted to make sure that they did it well. And so that kept them in the project and it kept them working really hard. So this is where the project has become now. So I've unfortunately lost Carla to Alberta. And so I had to figure out a way that I could do an aspect of this on my own. I've also been approached by the municipality of Grassland to do something similar in Hartney. And so I said, I'm going to try, but I said it might take me a few years and a few classes to do it. So I've created as a final project in history, kind of a local history project where I'm asking students to demonstrate some of their skills. And so they get this at the beginning of the year, and we kind of work through some of these tasks, some of these skills together, and then they're using local content to submit a final submission to them. So this photograph on the left is one of my students, a photo of his grandpa's yard. And his grandpa restored old military planes, and his yard was right beside the Hartney airstrip where during World War II, lots of pilots were training. So he, through this photo, dug into that history. The artifact analysis, they can bring something in from home or they can use artifacts from our local museum. I was approached by Brad Coe, who's kind of, I always say, our local Hartney historian. He was asking if there was any way that I could help him gather the stories of newcomers to Hartney from the Philippines. And so the oral history interview has done that. A few of my Filipino students have interviewed their parents about their choices to come to Hartney and what their impressions were and things like that. So we've got transcripts of those interviews. The local history essay, the students gather photos of a place over time and kind of do an analysis on continuity and change. And then the last one is we were tying this to buildings because we thought that was a way to do the QR codes. They're doing some research and trying to tell the story of a place in or around Hartney. And we're going to collect these as our own little archive and then turn them over to the municipality. So just a quick couple other things I was going to say. This is some of the other ways that we've incorporated some local history as well. I did offer the option to do a field trip as your final project. And this was a student who happened to have Fort Desjardins on their land and did a field trip for the rest of their classmates on artifacts that they'd found, as well as trapping in the area they'd done with their grandparent. And the last one was using Brad Coe's photos. He is, as I said, he's a local historian and collects historic photos of Hartney. And we have done some digital mapping of those photographs in grade 10 geography. Okay. I was going to say, I'll stop sharing my screen. And if anybody has any questions, there we go. Are we back?
Certainly worthy of the honor the recognition you received. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was Carla and I worked really, really well together, and we had an exceptional group of kids that really did work well with us too. So it was a very exciting thing that I'm not sure we'll ever fully recreate, but it was an amazing experience.
Does anybody else have questions, comments, or?
Tracey, 20 years from now, when you run into one of your students on the street, this is the kind of thing they're going to remember. Not the facts and figures, 1867, 19, this, and you will find it rewarding 20 years down the road when you meet some of those kids.
Yeah.
Janice?
Well, sorry, I was going to say, I just keep reminding myself that, yes, I might not get all the facts in all the time, but if they know how,
Yeah.
right? And if they know how to be curious, they're on the way, right? And I just think that's valuable. And for me, it's always, if I can have a kid be curious and to ask questions, like we always ask this one, why, Hartney was kind of a booming place in the beginning of the 1900s, but why is Deloraine bigger than us now? If they can ask those questions, they'll be okay.
Janice, you had a comment?
Well, I have a comment because it was interesting to hear about Elgin. My grandfather went there in 1905. He bought the Elgin Banner, I think was the name of the newspaper. My father was on the kitchen table. We have some pictures. And yeah, so it was quite exciting. I wish I was still back in the classroom working with the kids. Yeah.
Welcome, Shane.
Hey.
One of the I think the greater benefits, and you alluded to that, was at the fact that there was an end project that was public and that was out in the community, and that I think was just the feather on the cap, I would say, because it's there and it's for everyone to enjoy. I was curious, was there funding to do up those signs, or was there a grant that you received, or?
The Whitewater Park Committee, the park committee actually took that on, and they had a grant to do that. So
Okay.
once the pieces were written, we
Right.
kind of turned it over to the park committee and our municipality, because there is a cost to also QR codes require your information to be in a permanent location. And so our municipality hosts those, and then the QR codes were made for that. So
Very good. Anyone else? I'm just amazed at how organized and how cohesive everything went together. And And I just, because I was an elementary school teacher and we always talked about integration of subject areas, LA and social studies and sometimes, and I think we often think about small schools that there's some, I don't want to say, struggles with small schools because, you know, the big schools offer so much more, but this really worked to your advantage too, because you were able to get the students interested in it, and it was so meaningful to them, and it just worked out so well for you and for the kids too, because that's who we want to address is the students. Yeah.
Well, and I really do think this was something that I don't think I could accomplish in a larger school. You know, we shared those students, and even, you know, when we were designing it for them, that same project also got them marks in history and marks in ELA.
Yeah.
So, you know, Carla designed a rubric on, I'm going to mark the writing parts. I'm going to mark this. I'm marking that. And yeah, we were next door. We were having daily conversations about what we needed. And because we could play off each other,
Right.
it really was a benefit to be small.
Yeah, it was like basically team teaching in two different subject areas. You know, we hate to call them because they're very related to each other, but the assessments of those skills are kind of separate too. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, very exciting.
Tracey.
Shane?
Yes.
Hi there. Hi, Tracey. I was very impressed with your presentation today. I'm a high school teacher in Toulon, so we're about 25 minutes north of Winnipeg. It's a small school as well. Kindergarten is next door, but we have grade 7 and 8s in our building all the way up to high school. I'm very inspired, and I was taking notes as you were talking. I teach English, art, and cinema history, although I have a geography history major minor. This makes me want to work with the history teacher in the high school and do something for our local museum. The museum in Toulon, small town museum, and it struggles to make connections with kids. And this is fantastic. I can see why you were recognized for this. This is an amazing project. So congratulations. And you've inspired me.
Thank you. One of the other things I was going to say, we've proposed, which might be on the horizon, I'm just thinking that small school things as well, is we were talking about having our high school students design like a historical walk in the community too for the elementary students. And I think that might be an easy starting point because it's just not maybe so intimidating. And we've also done some pretty interesting videos. I'm just thinking if you're doing with the cinema teacher and things like that too. We did some YouTube videos, you know, highlighting the history of local farms and things like that as well. And so those seem to be, you know, because they were a little bit smaller, I think that was a great starting point.
Yeah, and with that strength, I really like to notice too, one of the things too that you incorporated was the study of the Métis and First Nations people into that too. So that's
we did send letters out to, you know, the Manitoba Métis Federation, the Turtle Mountain Métis Federation. We met with a local historian and things as well there. And I think those are the stories that we need to continue working on adding. But I also even think the kids going to a museum and saying, there's some things missing here. You know what I mean? Like, I think that in itself is also a step forward too. So.
Well, thank you very much, Tracey. Certainly, you've inspired me, and I've been retired for 100 years, so it's so wonderful. So
Well,
not that long.
I really appreciate you guys asking me. So.
No, I mean it's just it makes me remember the energies and all the skills that need to go into doing a project-based things and just the integration with other staff and all that stuff too. So yeah, well deserved. So I think if we don't have any more, Ken, did you have something else to say?
No, that's good.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much for making it real, making it local, and making it theirs.
Yeah, very exciting, and it's it's your kind of enthusiasm, your skill set too, that sort of encourages us to, you know, look, we're hoping to do more sessions in the future too, and we're hoping to build, you know, build the number of people that will take interest in this too. And this was a very, very positive session. So hopefully, and we will build on this, and maybe in the fall we'll have another session. So thank you very much, Tracey, and wishing you the best in the next couple months of teaching. And we appreciate you taking the time, well put together. And we have Tracey, the other Tracey, Tracey Turner. She's going to spend a few minutes just talking to you about some of the resources that the Manitoba Historical Society can provide teachers and students, not only teachers, but students as well. I also noted too that you referred to the Smithsonian too, Tracey, for good for you. Yeah, that's an amazing reference there too. Okay, so we'll just, I better stop talking. Tracey, if you want to just go ahead, please.
There, I've unmuted my mic. Hi, everyone. And Tracey, thank you so much for that presentation. Wow, like that's, you know, that reminds me of the kind of projects. I homeschooled my girls until they went into high school. And we had homeschool groups where we would put together projects that had this kind of organic learning. So it just reminds me of that kind of energy and enthusiasm, sparking curiosity. Really, really well done. Amazing. So I'm the executive director of the Manitoba Historical Society, and you know, we're making efforts to kind of reach out. We don't know how many teachers know about us. We certainly provide the public, students, educators, all kinds of incredible free resources on our website and in our publications. So I thought I'd just take like a couple minutes, just maybe do a quick little rundown about our website and the kinds of things that we offer. So I'm going to share my screen here and pull up our website here. I think everyone can see it. So in December, we launched a new website. For the longest time, we had a fairly static, very text-based website. So it's now much more dynamic. It's animated. It really kind of reflects the energy behind history. And what we want to say is that history is never static. It's never accomplished. It's being laid down minute by minute. And we're hopefully giving that kind of freshness in the way the website presents. I'll tell you a little bit about the Manitoba Historical Society. So you can go to an About Us here and just learn about our history. Which is really fascinating. And I would encourage any of you to just have a look at that. There's these various articles that talk about the founding of the Historical Society. So we were founded in 1879. We are one of the oldest historical organizations in Western Canada. Many of the objects, artifacts, memoirs, and archival documents that founded the Manitoba Archives, the Winnipeg Archives, and at the Manitoba Museum came from the early formation of the Manitoba Historical Society. So there's all kinds of information here that you can learn about us, but some very prominent people got together and formed our society, and we are still going and innovating and modernizing the way we approach presenting history. I will talk a little bit about our publication now. So our publication, Prairie History, here we go. So Prairie History is a publication we produce. You might be familiar with Canada's History magazine. Well, this is Prairie History. And Prairie History covers the histories of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta, as well as the US borderlands on occasion. Our goal is to publish the latest and best original work of young and experienced scholars, professionals, and amateurs, as well as heritage news and commentaries. There's book reviews. It's a really interesting publication because Prairie History is actually kind of a hybrid publication. It's a combination of what I would call popular writing as well as academic writing. So you get a real mixed bag, which is really amazing in the sense that you get exposed to many different writing styles and subject matter. Our current issue features all kinds of articles about the Centennial of Winnipeg. So as a subscriber, you get 3 issues of Prairie History a year for $60 per year or $50 as a digital version. It's also available through the City of Winnipeg library system and all of the university libraries through their online journal subscriptions. So there's definitely ways to access it for free, but we would love for you to become a member and subscribe to Prairie History. It's a really awesome, awesome magazine. And the other thing you get is access to all our past issues. So just scrolling through past issues, Prairie History started being published in 2020. Prior to Prairie History, we actually published Manitoba History. Manitoba History was published, I believe, the first issue was in 1980. So the decision was in 2019 to wrap up Manitoba History and start publishing Prairie History, and sort of expand the idea that the history and experience of the prairies was something that we could present and be a little bit broader in our in how we approach historical interpretation. So that's one of the really amazing things that we offer to members and subscribers. A great asset and resource on our website is our research and archives page. And I think Tracey was talking about how her students were accessing this. So you can go to our archives page. Right here, you see Historic Sites of Manitoba. This is an amazing resource. It is a searchable interactive page of Manitoba historic sites. You can search, when you go to the search page, you can search by buildings, cemeteries, locations, buildings, schools. So there's all different site types. They're GPS located. So if we say wanted to go to this war memorial, if I click on it, hoping it's going to go, there we go. You'll get pages on the history of the memorial, a blurb, photographs. Sometimes the photographs are ours. Sometimes they're ones we've sourced from the archives. Google Map GPS locator, so how to find it. And then there's always lots of great source references. And at the end of every historic site that you'll see listed, there are citations. And these are great launching points for your students. You know, it saves them actually having to go off of a Google search and actually see stuff that our researchers have already found as primary resources and put in our citations. So it's a great starting point, great launching point. And on our historic sites page, I'll let you know that we have over 10,000 historic sites listed in Manitoba. So it's an extensive database that you can have a look at. So I'm just going to scroll back here. Let's see. So getting back to that page, another really wonderful resource is Memorable Manitobans. Now, these sites are always expanding. We're always adding to them on a daily basis. Right now, our Memorable Manitobans has, I believe, over 14,000 people listed on here. And you can search by name or by alphabet. So if we go to a particular listing, let's see, who do we want to look at? We'll just pick this one here. So Thomas Edward Bailey, it'll have a nice bio, where they lived, when they were born, what they did, and of course, always citations. So it's a great resource as well. Also on our research and archives page, there is archives of our publications. There's a section called Manitoba Communities, all kinds of archival documents. We have memoirs, listings of Manitoba organizations and businesses. And these are some of our past publications. And things like a digital version of history books that are out of print, Manitoba photographer listings, all kinds of incredible things that you can explore. So I would I would really encourage you to check it out and explore our archives page, because there's just so many treasures there, and you can just spend hours and hours, you know, and it's fascinating stuff. So that's just a bit of a rundown about our webpage. What I will say too is we know that we know students are using our website all the time, because we see this correlation between the beginning of the school year and particular days when people are accessing it during school hours. So we know that it's being used as used as a resource. The other things that we do is commemoration and awards programs, and sometimes we actually organize events and things that can help build community around history. And just that's a bit of a rundown. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I hope you check out the website and consider becoming a subscriber and member of the MHS.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And it is an amazing resource. Like I say, you can spend hours there. And it is, and it's good to see that, and it's there to be used. So, and with that, I think that ends our session. And as I said before, we're hoping to continue this, possibly having another session in the fall. So we will be meeting as a committee and looking at some other possible speakers or people that could add to the session information. So hopefully pass on this to your colleagues, and we will be sending out a notice. And thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your support, and I'm so glad that you found this a positive and productive evening or late afternoon.